I was never really a runner. The way I see running is a gift, especially when you have stage 4 cancer. I'm Anne. I'm running the Boston Marathon, presented by Bank of America. I run for Dana-Farber Cancer Institute to give people like me a chance to thrive in life, even with cancer.
Join Bank of America in helping Anne's cause. Give if you can at BofA.com/supportAnne. What would you like the power to do? References to charitable organizations is not an endorsement by Bank of America Corporation. Copyright 2025.
Hi everyone, I'm Barbara, and this is Age Better. Today we're diving into a hot topic that's getting a lot of attention lately: protein. More specifically, how much protein women in midlife really need to stay strong, energized, and feeling good. You know, we all want that. If you're anything like me, you've probably heard a million different takes. So how do we cut through all the noise about protein? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do today with the help of someone who really knows her stuff. I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome Gretel Schueller to the show. It's her first time on the show. She's the managing editor of Health and Wellness for U.S. News & World Report and the powerhouse behind their Best Diets rankings. You all know what this is, the go-to resource that millions turn to every January to make smarter, science-backed nutrition decisions. They list the best diet that you could absolutely be on. Anyway, Gretel is not only a decorated journalist, she's a James Beard Award winner and has earned multiple digital health awards. But she's also one of the most trusted voices in evidence-based nutrition journalism. In this episode, Gretel is going to help us create the ultimate protein cheat sheet, especially for you. She'll break down exactly how much you need, why it matters, and best of all, how to actually get it into your life without overdoing it on animal protein or feeling like you have to eat all day long. And good news, the link to the protein cheat sheet will be in the show notes, so print it out and tape it to your fridge like I'm going to do. And wait, there's more, a bonus. She's sharing the #1 ranked diet from this year's U.S. News & World Report Best Diets list and why it might be a perfect fit for women in midlife. So if you're looking to support your muscles, protect your bones, fire up your metabolism, and just feel better, you will love this episode. All right, everyone, get ready to age better. Hello, Gretel, and welcome to Age Better. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me, Barbara. I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
Yeah, this is a topic that so many people want me to talk about, and finally I'm doing an episode about it, so yay. So let's go right to the basics. Now, not too long ago, I had a wonderful doctor, a medical expert on the show, Dr. Vonda Wright, and I know you know who she is as well, and she's really become a leading voice, especially on social media, about menopause and longevity and strength training and all that good stuff. And so we did talk about protein. We didn't give the specifics about it because we covered so many other things. But she did say, and I quote, that women in midlife should be getting 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight, not your current body weight. If you're hoping to lose weight, your ideal body weight, meaning your healthiest body weight. And you can decide that maybe with your doctor. Dr. Stacy Sims, another really big voice in this field and a researcher also, she said that no matter what your weight, women in midlife should be getting 130 grams of protein a day. So that it's a lot of protein. It's a lot of protein. And so, Gretel, why is protein so important, especially in midlife?
Right. So, I have a teenage son who's obsessed with protein for different reasons. But yeah, so protein is important. It's, yes, as we've talked about, it's the building block or helps grow and maintain muscles, but it's also important for growing and maintaining healthy skin, hair, bones. Some proteins act as enzymes. Some proteins act as antibodies to help fight infection. So they really are essential at all ages, for sure. They're also helpful for weight loss. So because they fill us up and keep us feeling full for longer. And studies have shown for people who are cutting their calories, having a higher protein intake will minimize the muscle loss that takes place when you lose weight. And then last but not least, as you started to touch on, as we grow older, there's a growing body of research that shows that older people actually need more protein than we used to think. In fact, you need more protein than you needed as a middle-aged adult, a younger adult. And there's a few reasons for that. One that people might be more familiar with is something called sarcopenia or muscle loss. So as we age,
You're very familiar with it because we talk about sarcopenia and osteoporosis and osteopenia a lot.
So as we age, muscles naturally decline through no fault of our own. Similarly, as we age, we also become less efficient at making protein. Our body's making protein. So you need more protein basically to achieve that same level of muscle maintenance, so to speak. And then there's something called anabolic resistance. This is a little more technical, but essentially, as we get older, we become more resistant to the muscle building effects of protein. So simply put, you need more protein for the same effect to stimulate muscle growth. And then protein breaks down in our body at a higher rate the older we get. So same thing, you need more protein to compensate for that loss. And then last but not least, as we age, especially with older adults, we tend to eat less. And so for that reason, every calorie really has to carry its weight, and sometimes it doesn't. So, you're eating empty calories. And so instead of eating, protein packed or healthy fats or those complex carbs. So all of these things are to say that lower muscle mass is not a good thing. You don't have to be an athlete to worry about muscle loss. Like, it's something that we should all be aware of and be concerned about. Studies have shown that the lower your muscle mass is, there's an increase in metabolic syndrome, cardiovascular disease. So this is all to say, long-winded way of saying that experts agree that getting protein is important. How much protein, I think, is somewhat up for debate. There's no doubt that the two doctors you recommend, those are definitely estimates on the higher end of the spectrum.
Before you continue, I just have to say, Gretel, that both of those were recommending, let's just say 130 grams a day for midlife women, because they were also encouraging them to work out more and to strength train more. So they're going on the assumption that you're going to listen to me and you're going to be doing that. So therefore you need 130. So sorry.
Yeah, and that's totally reasonable then, because the more active you become, all of these numbers would increase. So the more active you are, the more protein. And just for some reference range, because we're told that the current RDA, recommended daily allowance of protein, is 8.8 grams per kilo of body weight. That translates, I'm going to do some easy math here. If you're 160 pounds, that translates into 58 grams a day, which is not very much protein.
No.
And so pretty much everyone agrees that that's not enough protein. That's like the bare minimum, right? Now, as we get older, experts, the range is anywhere between 1 and 1.5 grams per kilo of body weight. Again, I'm going to do the math here. That translates into 72 to 109 grams of protein a day for someone who weighs 160 pounds. Again, that's assuming someone's sedentary, not someone who's working out or doing strength training, which is something that you should be doing to help stop those muscles from losing your muscle mass, basically. So Dr. Sims and Dr. Wright's recommendations are totally in line if you're going to be active. They align with those protein recommendations. I personally am someone who is in the early stages of menopause. I am not great at math, so I try to, and I'm not super active. So I'm kind of stuck to my desk all day. So I personally try to tell myself, aim for a little over 100 a day. And so how do you do that? Well, one way is you want to make sure that you're spreading out that protein intake across the day. You don't want to have some massive protein shake in the morning that covers 50% of your protein intake. And we can get into some reasons on why that is. One of them is that there's a little disagreement on how much is too much. But in a sitting, your body can only absorb so much, right? And then what will happen is the extra protein will get stored as fat or as glucose and fat. And if you're not active, and again, that's why it's important to be active. If you're not active, it's going to get stored as glucose and fat and eventually become extra weight if you're not active. So typically, experts will say, if you're not, don't have more than 30, 40 grams of protein in one sitting, because it's probably just not going to get processed. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Unless, you're some hardcore athlete that's working out a lot.
Right. Like my daughter, and sounds like maybe your son also. But yes. And when I put it out on social media that I was going to be doing this episode, and people really, they said that they're struggling with the practical side, really, of getting enough protein. And let's assume 100 to 130. Let's just go with that, without consuming too many calories. So this is really an issue. So can you walk us through what some strategies are that you've seen in your research and people that you have interviewed about this that you see really works?
Right. So I do want to, I know that we want to talk about protein, but I also want us to think about, especially for women as we age, there's some other factors we should take into account in terms of diet and what we're eating. And so I'm going to give a little bit of context, and hopefully this will all make sense. But as we age, in addition to the muscle loss, women especially, we're dealing with menopause. And with menopause, go hand in hand goes an increased risk for heart disease. In fact, it increases significantly after menopause. Similarly, because of all the hormone changes, bone density decreases. So you want to take into account, calcium and magnesium and vitamin K. For the heart disease factor, you want to focus on fiber and healthy fats. And then if you're experiencing things like hot flashes, study after study supports the concept of a plant-forward diet. So taking all of those things to account, here at US News, we evaluate a whole slew of diets every year. And one of the categories we look at is best diets for menopause. And there are two dietitians, you may be familiar with them, Elizabeth Ward and Hillary Wright. And they developed a diet called the Menopause Diet Plan. And there's some sort of overarching take-home messages that also account for the increased, protein intake that you're supposed to be having. So first of all, we want to try and keep a plant-forward diet or eating plan. We want to make sure our meals, that what we're eating, are spaced out across the day somewhat evenly, although we want to end earlier in the evening. Again, this is because we tend to just gain weight looking at food. I know I can speak for myself. And you want to space it out, but you also don't want to eat, past 7 or 8, again, depending on your hours and so on. And you want to aim, and this is the important part, about 30 grams of protein per meal and snack. Aim for 2 times a week, seafood. Again, alcohol, sodium, added sugars, those are all things that have been found to increase the prevalence of hot flashes. Likewise, soy foods can diminish the effects. Again, another reason for plant-based. So I actually put together a very sort of a simple meal plan for a day, what that might look like, that includes 150 grams of protein, actually.
Wow.
Again, this is assuming that you're doing some strength training as well. It's under 2,000 calories. And so I'm just going to kind of walk through it if that's okay with you.
Yes, please.
Okay. So for breakfast, I'm not a huge breakfast person, but so you're looking for things that are simple. I love those ready-made boiled eggs that you can buy at the store. So I'll have one of those, a slice of whole wheat toast. There we're getting our fiber with peanut butter. Peanut butter is actually a great plant-based source of protein. Plus it's got healthy fats.
That's what I have every morning.
Great.
Every single morning without fail. Peanut butter smeared on a piece of Robert's thin sliced bread.
Oh yeah. I get the Ezekiel bread. So I get, all the fiber. And then if you're a coffee or tea drinker, I tend to add soy milk to my coffee every morning. So, you get some there. A great snack is Greek yogurt or cottage cheese. They really have a big bang for your buck when it comes to protein, also rich in calcium. It deals with the bone loss. Mix it with some berries or fruit if you like. And then lunch, this is a great example of thinking of vegetables as a protein delivery device. And so for lunch, it might be a salad with greens and veggies of your choice, but add those proteins. So like a pouch of the tuna or flake salmon, cup of chickpeas or whatever bean you might like, slivered almonds, nuts, seeds. These are all things that bump up the protein of a salad. And so pick the proteins you like, but I think chickpeas, flake tuna, seeds and nuts are great ways to sort of turn a salad into a real protein powerhouse.
That's what I do, by the way. I'll make a bunch of greens and put in whatever vegetables I have on hand, as you said, but then I'll add some protein, again, whatever I have on hand, maybe leftover chicken or some leftover salmon. I'll eat half the night before and save the other half for this lunch, and add in a whole bunch of seeds and nuts, all different kinds of seeds and nuts. And it's a really healthy lunch filled with all kinds of fiber and protein.
Exactly.
and easy.
And it tastes good.
And it's good. And I put in
Yeah.
some
And
cranberries too
again,
for a little extra.
oh yeah, that's a great one. Yeah. And then snack. One of the things that a lot of dietitians say to me is that you want to try and mix your macronutrients. So that's the protein, your complex carbs, the good carbs. So not donuts, but like beans and your healthy fats. So a great snack is an apple with some peanut butter on it. So you're getting the fiber and the phytonutrients as well as a little dose of protein. And then for dinner, now animal protein shouldn't be off the table completely. I mean, it's your choice, obviously, but when you are looking at animal proteins, look at the lean proteins. So whether that's a fillet of salmon or tuna or a boneless, skinless chicken breast. So on average, like the size of your hand serving of a boneless, skinless chicken breast can have like 45 grams of protein. So it packs a punch. Combine that with some veggies. One of the easy sort of swishes that you can do is to replace your regular pasta with chickpea or pea pasta. There's a lot of these pastas out there now that are made from beans and chickpea. They are twice the protein amount of regular, white flour pasta. So it's an easy way to sort of sneak in some protein that way too. And yeah, so what I just walked through, that'll give you about 150 grams of protein.
That's incredible. And do you have this written up so I can maybe attach it in the show notes?
I'm happy to share it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. All right, everyone, it is in the show notes. So as soon as you're done listening to this conversation, check out that and download it, print it out, and hold on to it. I mean, I eat like that most of the time, but I'm not perfect, of course. But it's good to know that I am getting probably a fair amount of protein every day. Not once, by the way, did you mention having a protein powder shake. So let's go. And you did mention, I mean, a lot of people want to know about plant-based protein options. And you did mention quite a few. But before we move on to my question about supplements and powders, anything else you want to say about plant-based protein options that are out there?
Well, I think you made a good point. Like, I think we do tend to over-obsess with our protein intake, and most of us probably think we're not getting enough protein, but you'd be surprised, especially like even a fruit salad has protein. It doesn't have a steak, but it has protein. And so we actually, vegetarians, if you eat a healthy vegetarian diet, you can get your protein intake, whether it's 100 or 150, what you're aiming for, you can have no trouble getting that just through your food choices, through your food, just regular food choices, not protein powders. Beans, lentils, tofu, tempeh, low-fat yogurts, cottage cheese. These are all great sources and healthy sources of protein.
Nuts and seeds.
Yes, nuts and seeds. That's right.
Which I do like in the afternoon. I'll just take like a handful of nuts and seeds, whatever's around. So you're getting the fiber and the protein and the healthy fats. Yeah.
And then another great one is, if you like it, I know some people don't love the taste, is to replace white rice with quinoa. Quinoa has like twice the protein amount of white rice, and it's also full of all sorts of other phytonutrients and vitamins and so on, and as well as fiber. It's a great source of iron, which is another nutrient that we should be getting more of. But yet, in terms of protein powders.
Yeah, so let's get to that, because what I do just every day, now it's just a habit. I have a small, it's only about this, maybe 6 ounces, something like that, of, you can fill it with liquid. And I put in 1 scoop of vanilla protein powder with my scoop of creatine, which I just started doing about 2 months ago. I had an expert, one of the leading experts in the country, Dr. Abby Ryan Smith, on the show from UNC Chapel Hill, talking about creatine for women specifically, because that's what her research is about. And she convinced me, so now I'm on creatine and protein powder. So I shake that up and I just sip it for like about an hour. I just do it. So I do, just in case. It's almost like truly like a supplement, just in case I don't hit my numbers. But let's talk about the protein powder.
Right. But I think the way you do it, that's the way to do it, is to think of it as a supplement. It's not a replacement for the protein.
No, I would never replace it, a meal with that.
Right. Exactly. It's a supplement. So when we're talking about protein powders, like I said, I do think that we tend to overthink. People tend to use protein powders as a replacement rather than a supplement to their diet. Now, if you are going to use a protein powder, there's just a couple things to keep in mind. There's basically 3 sources of protein when it comes to protein powders, right? There's plant-based protein powders, and those are really becoming more and more prevalent. And those are protein powders that come from soybeans, peas, rice, potatoes, even hemp. Then there's protein powders that come from egg. And then the most common are the whey protein powders that come from milk.
Whey isolate?
Yes, that's right.
Specifically? That's what I use.
The whey protein ones are particularly popular for people who are bodybuilders because it's the most bioavailable form of protein. And so if you're really into the bodybuilding, whey protein is the way to go. If you have a milk intolerance or a lactose intolerance, you may want to look at the plant-based protein powders. I use one that has pea protein as its main ingredient. But
Can
the
you
thing
share
to keep
the
in mind,
brand? Are you
Evolve?
Evolve?
It's Evolve.
Okay. I'll put a link in just so people have that option.
Sure. Yeah. And it's pretty tasteless, which is I like too, because I like to mix. Sometimes I mix it in my coffee. Sometimes I'll mix it in a smoothie. But I think the important take home here is if you're going to use them, make sure you read the labels, because a lot of these protein powders are packed with all sorts of additives, whether it's added sugar, artificial colors and flavors, thickeners, and so on. So because a protein powder is considered a dietary supplement, they're not regulated by the FDA. So there's no way to sort of confirm that the label is really saying, has what it claims to have. There was a study by an organization called the Clean Label Project recently that found that many of the very popular protein powders that people use had significant levels of heavy metals, of cadmium, and some had a BPA. So what you want to make sure that when you're looking at a protein powder is that it's gone through some sort of independent testing or verification. And a popular one is NSF. So just look for the NSF logo on your product, and that will sort of give you some peace of mind that it really contains what it says and not has those extra surprises like heavy metals.
Thank you for that. The one I use, and it is vanilla flavored. It's not unflavored. My creatine is unflavored. It does have the NSF, because someone advised me to look for that a long time ago when I started. And I'm going to put a link to that one also, just so everyone, you have options. You have the plant-based unflavored option, as well as the other option if you choose.
Right. And I do want to stress, it definitely should not be a meal replacement, because I know some people tend to do that. But yeah. And just to get back to also plant versus animal protein, I think we mistakenly think that animal proteins are, quote, better than plant proteins because there's something called the complete protein. And so a complete protein, basically what that means is that there are about 20 amino acids out there, which are the building blocks of proteins. And so a complete protein has the 9 amino acids that our body can't make on their own. The rest of the amino acids our bodies are able to make. And so when we obsess about complete proteins, we're talking about essentially animal-based proteins. So meats, seafoods, eggs are all complete proteins. There are a few plant-based proteins that are complete proteins. Soy, buckwheat, and actually quinoa are also considered complete proteins. But what I want to make clear is it doesn't have to be a complete protein. As long as you're getting a varied diet with a mix of plants and veggies and whole grains and nuts and seeds, I guarantee you are getting all of the 9 essential amino acids. You may not be getting them all in from one place, but you're getting them. For people who might worry about that, some great examples of complete proteins are mixing rice and beans.
Right.
Eat rice and beans and you'll get
the
it.
classic one. Yeah, plant-based version.
And also whole wheat toast with peanut butter, you'll get a complete protein. I think it's really important. You don't have to have animal protein to have a quote-unquote complete protein.
I do think that was a concern for so many people listening in, if to get that amount, the ideal amount of protein, I'm going to really have to increase my intake of animal protein. And clearly that's not the case.
No.
So good news.
Yeah.
Not to say that you don't have to, by the way. If you want to have that steak, go for it. Not so much. I'm sure you'd agree, Gretel.
Everything in moderation, right?
Everything in moderation. Exactly right. So you gave us a cheat sheet already. You kind of took us through a kind of a day in the life of eating the ideal protein way. And you very kindly said that you would give me the link so I can attach it to the show notes so everyone can have it for themselves. So that's really great and so helpful. But we are on the topic of nutrition, of course. We're talking about healthy eating. And of course, you oversee the annual, very, very popular U.S. News and World Report's Best Diets list, which comes out every January. I know I myself can't wait to see it. And tell me if I'm wrong, the last few years, it's kind of been the same one because it keeps showing itself as a great way to eat. So please tell us, Gretel. Everyone may have already seen it. I'm sure maybe you have, but let's hear it right from the source. Gretel, what is the number one best way to eat, best diet, and why?
Right. So the best overall diet, and it has been consistent for a few years now, gosh, I want to say maybe even 7 or 8 years at this point, is the Mediterranean diet.
Mm-hmm.
And before I get into specifically what that is, what makes a good diet, what makes, why did it win? So our experts, and we have 69 experts, they're doctors and dietitians who evaluate 38 diets this year. And so the Mediterranean diet's a winner because it's healthy, it's delicious, it doesn't restrict entire food groups, it's family friendly, it's sustainable. You're never going to feel like deprived because there's a lot of crazy, weird diets out there. And the moment you start to feel overly restricted in what you can and can't eat, or it's the kind of diet where if you're in a social setting or you go out to eat, it'll be challenging, to say the least, to follow that diet. They just don't tend to last for the long term. And you really do want an eating plan. Diet's sort of a misleading word. We want an eating plan that's sustainable for the long term. And the Mediterranean diet is tried and true. It's backed at this point by decades of science in terms of all the health benefits. So the Mediterranean diet, as the name implies, is inspired by the cuisines of Greece and the other countries of the Mediterranean. And what that essentially means is this is a really plant-forward diet, right? Vegetables and whole grains and fruits kind of take center stage on your plate. Okay, the red meat, treat it like a special occasion treat. Same with sweets. Instead, desserts are typically fruit rather than, simple carbs and sugary foods. But again, the idea is that you really want to fill your plate with vegetables and whole grains and keep them the sort of the stars of each meal. And you can adapt. What's also nice about the Mediterranean is that you can adapt it to any country cuisine. I know it's called the Mediterranean, so we think of a lot of seafood or feta or foods of Greece and the other Mediterranean countries, but you can adapt this to, South American cuisines, Japanese cuisine, or really anything, because the concepts are the same. Yeah.
So just kind of connect the Mediterranean diet back to what we've been talking about in getting enough protein. You can, in fact, follow that way of eating and still get your protein, as we've been saying, for sure.
Yeah.
Right?
And again, I don't know, we touched so much about it, but beans and lentils and, all the pulses, and there's so many things. They're so adaptable. There's an easy way to cheeses, the fetas, the low-fat Greek yogurt. Greek yogurt is a great and easy source of protein.
Oh, that's a daily thing for me. It just, again, so much of this now has become habit for me. And that's the best way. Like my little protein shake, don't even think about it. Mindlessly going into the fridge and grabbing my Greek yogurt and taking it right from the container. Don't even think too much about it. Sometimes we'll put in the nuts and seeds directly into. It just becomes so habitual. It becomes easier. And then before you know it, you're getting all the protein that you need, as well as a lot of other very healthy things, right?
Exactly. One of mine actually is kefir. I love kefir, low-fat kefir.
I have to try that again.
And the advantage is not only are you getting plenty of protein, you're getting your calcium and you're getting good probiotics, which can never hurt. So, and like a glass of low-fat kefir has about, I guess, it depends on the brand and all that, but has about 20 grams of protein. I really love the taste. So it's something that I'll have, in between as an easy snack.
That's a great idea. You know what I'm going to do, Gretel? I'm actually going to, instead of adding just water to my protein creatine shake, I'm just going to use that. That's just a great idea.
Yeah.
It's not pronounced kefir. How do you pronounce it properly?
I've always thought it was called kefir, but
No, I would definitely go with what you
I have
say.
lived my whole life pronouncing it kefir, so maybe
Oh, I'm going to go with kefir. I'm going to sound fancy.
I
Kefir.
might be wrong. Yeah,
Whatever it
don't
is,
quote
it
me on
tastes
that.
good, and I'm going to buy some. That's a great
Right.
idea. So, oh my goodness. Did you want to add something, Gretel?
Well, I just wanted to say, so just to talk about best diets and all that.
Yeah,
So we evaluate 38 diets across 21 different health goals and diet categories. So that includes things like menopause that we talked about, but also obviously weight loss, bone health, mental health. And so you can see sort of the winning diets, because yes, Mediterranean was certainly a top winner, but it wasn't the only winner. And there are some other diets that you may consider as a healthy eating plan too.
yeah. Also, the DASH diet is right up there,
Correct.
isn't it? Is it? If it's not number
Yeah,
two, I think it's
it
number
is number
two.
2. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and that's specifically for heart health specifically, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's how it got its start. It stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension, and it was developed by scientists or researchers at the NIH. And yeah, its focus historically had been for heart health, but it's just an overall healthy diet. It's a lot like the Mediterranean, that it's plant forward. It has a little bit of more restrictions on fats, especially saturated fats, and it limits sodium intake.
Sure.
But the tenets are quite similar.
Oh, the same.
Again, just focus on the plant foods. Make veggies and whole grains, beans, make those the stars of your plate. I have a partner who grew up on meat and potatoes, and so we have been slowly moving that chunk of meat off the plate and just keeping it for special occasions, or just putting little pieces hidden in with the beans, or whatever else we might be eating.
Yep. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that was definitely my background too, growing up in Brooklyn. No question. I had to work very hard to make these changes, but I did it. And if I can do it, everyone, you can do it too. One other diet I want to really mention, which really is kind of newish, not new, but the mind diet, which really, it sounds like the Mediterranean diet, really, except it has a greater emphasis on berries, specifically berries for brain health.
Right. So the mind diet, actually, it's interesting you say it's like the Mediterranean. It's actually a combination of the Mediterranean and the DASH diet. I'm blanking on what mind stands for, but it's
Right. I used to know, and I don't know.
it's designed by researchers at Rush University specifically to look at sort of combat the effects of dementia and cognitive decline. And so much like the Mediterranean, very plant forward, few key differences. Like you said, the focus on berries, especially blueberries, as they've been found to have sort of an association with improving cognition. Nuts, again, those healthy fats, our brain loves healthy fats. So nuts and seeds are a great source of that. And then seafood. So salmon, tuna, great sources of those omega-3 healthy fats that we need for our brains. So the little stronger emphasis on those quote unquote brain healthy foods, but fairly similar otherwise.
Yep. So, it just sounds like, I think we kind of figured out what all the components should be of our healthy eating daily lives, everyone, right? But again, there will be in the show notes, Gretel's wonderful cheat sheet of how we should all be eating now to get all the protein and everything else that we need. So this was, Gretel, a great conversation. Again, I've been wanting to have this conversation about protein for a really long time. So I thank you for that. But before we wind down, before I let you go, what are your 3 top takeaways that you really want everyone to remember?
Okay, let's see if I can keep it to 3. One thing I wanted to say.
You can have as many as you want. We're good.
One thing I wanted to say is, if people want to up their protein intake, the easiest way to do it is not by vastly changing whatever it is they're eating, assuming they have a somewhat healthy diet, but rather to add protein to the things they're eating. So we talked about like having that salad as the protein delivery device. Like it's the same thing, like in the morning, do you eat oatmeal or do you eat some cereal? Maybe you sprinkle your protein powder in there, or maybe you add an extra egg to a breakfast that you normally don't have it. Like if you have avocado toast, add a boiled egg on top of it, or a fried egg if you want. Similarly, those switches, like going from white rice to brown rice, or going from white rice to quinoa, or from regular white pasta to chickpea flour pasta. Like those little things are easy switches that people can do that you're really not going to notice a difference in the foods that you eat, but will really pump up your protein levels. And then I guess other takeaways would be spread out those proteins over the course of the day, 20 to 35, whatever your goal is, but so that everything has a little bit of protein in it, all your meals. And mix up your proteins, keep that variety, and then you'll be sure to get all of those amino acids, and you're not going to have a deficiency in any amino acid. And then I know we've kind of touched on it, but when it comes to muscle loss, it's not only about diet. Obviously, you need to work in that strength and resistance training. So.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Thanks for the reminder that it's not just about food along with moving and moving properly and moving a lot, actually, just moving. You don't have to be strength training all day long, everyone. A couple of times a week would be great, but just keep moving. And you mentioned, Gretel, in the very beginning of our conversation, you said you're behind your desk a lot. I know, I totally get that. I can relate. But another habit that I picked up over the last, let's say 2 years is literally every 20 minutes, I get up. No matter what I'm doing. Except if I'm recording, I get up and we'll do a couple of push-ups, or I'll just walk around, do a couple of squats just to kind of move my body just for like a minute. And then I'll go sit back down.
It's so good. Yeah.
It's so good. It also energizes me. And that's really important trust me, as you get older. Trust me.
Oh, for sure. I was going to say, I have a little timer on my phone that beeps. I think it's every half hour. Like, you've been sitting for too long. And even if it's just to get up and walk down the hall and back, like you said, it helps.
It really does help. Yep. But don't ignore it. Don't ignore it. Gretel, thank you so much for coming. I know that you'll be back.
Thanks so much for having me, Barbara. This was really a fun discussion.
It was fun. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Don't forget to check out the show notes. See you next week. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode of Age Better Podcast, please do a few things. First, share it with all your friends and family. Then, subscribe to Age Better wherever you listen to podcasts, including YouTube, so you never miss a single episode. Finally, if you have ideas for topics you want me to cover in a future episode of Age Better, send an email to agebetterpodcast@gmail.com or reach out to me on social media. Until next time, remember this: we can't control getting older, but we can control how we do it. Talk to you soon. Age Better Podcast is a proud member of the Sound Advice Network. Sound Advice, women's voices amplified.